In an emergency, seconds count, and that's why CBS 17 is following up on staffing shortages at the Durham 911 Center. Good evening, I'm Angela Taylor.
And I'm Rob Carter. Glad you could join us tonight. Those staffing issues in Durham have led to Raleigh's center having to answer some of those calls. Tonight, only on CBS 17, we are hearing from an employee at Durham's center.
New at 11, Amy Cutler has been on this story from the beginning. She's live in Durham for us. And Amy, what did this employee have to say?
Angela, Rod, that employee is fed up. They tell me it is impacting morale and the quality of service that they provide. Now, since they still work at the center, we're not identifying them and have altered their voice.
Longer shifts with no breaks, being called in on your days off. That's what a Durham 911 call center employee tells me has become the norm.
The stress levels and lack of time off, lack of time to decompress means more mistakes, more errors. You have to think very critically as a call taker and a dispatcher.
I first started reporting about staffing shortages at the Durham 911 Center back in December, when city leaders confirmed a COVID outbreak meant Raleigh would be taking some of their calls. That help continues. As of last week, Durham was supposed to have 60 employees trained to answer 911 calls. They have 26 vacancies.
What do you think that might mean for residents who are calling 911 in an emergency?
Delayed time in answering the call because there's less people to take the calls, so people are waiting longer.
After calling and emailing the director of the center, Randy Beeman, I stopped by.
Hi, we're with CBS 17. We're just wondering if Randy Beeman is around.
With COVID restrictions still in place, I received an answer through the bell outside.
He is not available today.
Perhaps more concerning, the center is lowering its minimum staffing levels. CBS 17 obtaining internal emails that show they'll require 5 personnel or 4 personnel on shifts. Compare that to an internal email from back in April 2019. It had been 8 employees, and before that, 9 or 10.
2 people are always dispatching and not taking any calls, and so anybody that remains in excess of that would be people answering the 911 calls.
That means they could have just 2 or 3 people to answer calls on a shift. I showed those documents to Councilman Mark Anthony Middleton.
I don't think those numbers should be interpreted that a determination has been made that we don't need the staffing. That's what happens when you have a staffing situation. You have to adjust.
Then there is the issue, of course, of the 911 calls that go to Raleigh. They're supposed to ring here in the Durham Center for 30 seconds before going to the Raleigh Center. Bottom line, if you call 911 here in Durham County, have patience and stay on the line. Live in Durham, Amy Cutler, CBS 17 News.